For the longest time, when we talked about someone drinking too much, one word always seemed to come up: alcoholism. But that's all changing. In the medical world, they've shifted to a much more precise term: alcohol use disorder. And that's not just about changing words, it's about changing our entire understanding of the problem. So we're going to dive into what AUD really is, the huge impact it has, the complex reasons behind it, and the modern strategies that are offering real hope. Let's just start with a number, a huge number: 3.3 million. According to the World Health Organization, that's how many people die every single year because of the harmful use of alcohol. To put that in perspective, that's nearly 6% of all deaths on the entire planet. This is way beyond just a personal struggle. It's a massive public health crisis. And to even begin to tackle it, we've got to start with the right definition. So what exactly is alcohol use disorder, or AUD for short? Well, the official definition comes from the DSM-5, which is basically the handbook for mental health professionals. It describes AUD as a medical condition where someone can't control their drinking, even when it's causing serious problems in their life. Now, this is a big deal because it completely reframes the issue. It's not a moral failing or a lack of willpower, it's a diagnosable and, this is the most important part, a treatable illness. An illness with some really devastating consequences.
Okay, so think about it like this. Chronic, heavy drinking, it's like tipping over the very first domino in a long, destructive line. The effects just cascade through the body, damaging pretty much every organ system. But there are a few areas that get hit especially hard. Let's start at the top, with the control center, the brain. Alcohol is, and there's no nice way to put this, a neurotoxin. It's poison for your brain. And its long-term effects are profound. It can damage brain function so much that it impairs social skills, like making it hard to read facial expressions. In really severe cases, it can lead to alcoholic dementia. And get this, about 10% of all dementia cases are related to alcohol consumption, making it the second leading cause. That is a huge, often overlooked impact. And the damage doesn't stop in the brain, not by a long shot. When you look at the cardiovascular system, heavy alcohol use is a major risk factor for heart disease. We're talking high blood pressure, irregular heartbeats, and a much higher risk of stroke. And then there's the pancreas, which gets put under enormous strain. This can lead to pancreatitis, a severely painful and potentially life-threatening inflammation of the organ.
And now for the one you've probably heard about the most, the liver. As the body's main filter, it's right there on the front lines, trying to metabolize all that alcohol. Chronic overuse leads to this predictable progression of damage. First to fatty liver, then alcoholic hepatitis, and finally cirrhosis. And that's the stage where healthy working liver tissue gets replaced by useless scar tissue, basically crippling its ability to do its vital job.
Now here's something really interesting. AUD doesn't play out the same way for men and women. It really comes down to basic physiology. Women generally have a higher percentage of body fat and different metabolic rates, which means the same amount of alcohol leads to a higher blood alcohol concentration. And the result? Women tend to develop these serious long-term complications more quickly and, tragically, they face a higher mortality rate from the disorder.
The impact isn't just physical, it's also deeply psychological. There's an incredibly strong link between AUD and other psychiatric disorders. Actually, about a quarter of people with AUD also have a severe psychiatric disturbance, with depression and anxiety being the most common. And these conditions can get even worse during withdrawal, which creates this awful, vicious cycle. But there is a ray of hope here. With continued abstinence, these symptoms often improve dramatically.
Okay, so we've talked about the what. Now let's get into the why. Why do some people develop alcohol use disorder while others don't? Well, the answer isn't a simple one. It's not about a single cause, but a really complex interplay of different factors.
And this chart right here, it gets right to the heart of the matter. Research shows that the risk of developing AUD is split almost perfectly down the middle. About 50% comes from genetic factors, the predispositions you're born with, and the other 50% comes from environmental factors, your life experiences. This is so important because it moves the conversation away from blame and willpower and toward a much fuller understanding of risk. It's a true mix of nature and nurture.
Let's break those factors down a bit. On the genetic side, having a parent or a sibling with AUD makes you 3 to 4 times more likely to develop it yourself. That's huge. On the environmental side, things like high stress, chronic anxiety, and, this is a big one, starting to drink at an early age all increase that risk. And then there's the simplest factor of all, access. When alcohol is cheap and easy to get, the risk for the entire population just goes up.
Now that we've outlined the problem and its complex causes, let's turn to the path forward. Managing alcohol use disorder is a multi-step process, but it's one that's grounded in medical science and psychological support. The key thing to remember is that there is a clear, evidence-based strategy for recovery.
The very first step, detoxification, is absolutely critical, and this quote explains why. When someone with a physical dependence on alcohol stops abruptly, their nervous system, which is adapted to being constantly suppressed, can rebound with terrifying force. This can lead to seizures, a condition called delirium tremens, and yes, it can be fatal. That's why medical supervision isn't just recommended, it is absolutely essential.
So the whole treatment approach really rests on 3 core pillars. It all starts with that medically supervised detox, often using medications like benzodiazepines to safely manage those dangerous withdrawal symptoms. That's followed by long-term psychological support, things like therapy or peer groups, to build coping skills for the road ahead. And finally, specific medications can be used to help prevent relapse by managing cravings and the effects of alcohol.
Let's look a little closer at those medications, because they each work in a really unique way. Naltrexone basically works by reducing the rewarding, pleasurable feeling of drinking. It helps take away the high. Then you have acamprosate, which helps restabilize the brain's chemistry, especially the glutamate system, which goes into overdrive during withdrawal. This really helps reduce those cravings. And finally, disulfiram is what's known as aversion therapy. It works by making you feel physically ill if you drink, which creates a very powerful deterrent.
But management isn't just about what happens in a doctor's office. For so many people, community is a cornerstone of long-term recovery, and there are tons of options out there. You have everything from the well-known 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous to secular alternatives like Smart Recovery and LifeRank, and even groups tailored for specific people like Women for Sobriety. The key is finding a supportive community to help navigate the challenges of recovery.
And we'll end with a thought that connects this very modern problem to our deep evolutionary past. There's a theory called the drunken monkey hypothesis, which suggests that our primate ancestors developed a taste for ethanol because it signaled ripe, energy-rich fruit. A preference for alcohol was once a survival advantage. But today, in a world where pure, potent alcohol is cheap and abundant, we have to ask, has that ancient biological drive become a modern-day liability? It's a crucial question to reflect on.